Good evening. I'm Bob Bergeneau, physicist and also chancellor of UC Berkeley. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event that connects UC Berkeley with Silicon Valley. We could have not, just looking around, have asked for a better turnout than we have tonight. So thank all of you for joining us. I want to extend my deepest appreciation to John Riccitiello and Electronic Arts for this wonderful venue. Thank you, John, and also to Paul Otellini, John Batter, and moderator Liz Claman for participating in the panel. These alumni showcase the best of Berkeley, and we're very grateful to have them here. Each of tonight's panelists also recognizes his or her own role in ensuring the future of Cal's tradition of access and excellence by giving back to Berkeley in numerous ways throughout the year. I deeply appreciate their support. I thank each of you who have also played a part in maintaining the preeminence of our great university. Our event tonight is entitled Insight, Innovation, Inspiration. You will hear from distinguished panelists who exemplify these words in the work that they do. They reflect the leadership that Cal alumni are playing in Silicon Valley today. Even before the term Silicon Valley was coined, UC Berkeley has been an engine fueling this region's growth. The university takes great pride in its alumni and faculty, who have played a critical role in providing the ideas, leadership, and workforce that have helped define the industries here. From the research on campus that spawns new ideas and startups, to the work of our alumni in driving these businesses that create innovative products, UC Berkeley is a source of brainpower and a force for insight, innovation, and inspiration. I'm delighted to be with you this evening, and I look forward to more opportunities to share in your excitement for the future of Silicon Valley and UC Berkeley. Thank you. And now to our panel.
The brilliance of Berkeley, from innovation to inspiration, it all comes together tonight in Silicon Valley. Three leaders, all who have made it to the top of the world in technology, entertainment, and creativity, and all of them propelled by a UC Berkeley education. Beginning first with Paul Otellini. He's the CEO of Intel, the world's largest semiconductor company, with operations that stretch from Santa Clara to Argentina, to Malaysia and Israel. With Otellini at the helm, Intel has just reported record earnings as he continues to push innovation to the outer limits. Paul Otellini is the CEO of Intel and UC Berkeley class of 1974.
Right here, right now, there is no other place I wanna be. Right here, right now, watching the world.
John Riccitiello. He's the CEO of video game giant Electronic Arts. Under his leadership, EA makes billions entertaining the world with legendary games like Madden NFL, Need for Speed, The Sims, Rock Band, Tiger Woods, Medal of Honor, and FIFA Soccer. John Riccitiello is the CEO of Electronic Arts and UC Berkeley class of 1981. John Batter of DreamWorks Animation. He's the president of production of one of the world's most successful animated film studios. Batter has shepherded the blockbuster success of one of the biggest animated moneymakers of all time, the Shrek series, along with Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar, Shark Tale, and How to Train Your Dragon. John Batter of DreamWorks Animation is a member of UC Berkeley's class of 1985.
Right
And me, Liz Claman. I'm a financial news anchor for the Fox Business Network, bringing to the screen stories of the biggest names in the global business and financial world. I am also UC Berkeley class of 1985.
Right here, right now. There is no other place I wanna be.
UC Berkeley, Silicon Valley, one driving the other with the innovation and inspiration learned and cultivated within the richest educational atmosphere on the planet.
Right here, right now. There is no other place I wanna be.
Welcome to the brilliance of Berkeley in Silicon Valley. This is Bear Territory.
Watching the world wake up.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. I mean, who had the best picture? You have to give it to Riccitiello with the hair. My goodness. Oh, by the way, in getting the pictures from them, none of them wanted, well, of course, John Batter was like, I got my frat photo, no problem. But we so appreciate you coming here. And that was sort of a setup to really kind of give you an idea of the superior aspects of some of Cal's graduates. And this entire evening, the genesis of it came just about a year and a half ago when I was interviewing all these guys, because I come every year to do 3 days in the Valley for the Fox Business Network. And I was looking and I'm thinking, all these people are Cal graduates. We should get them on stage because we are so proud of them. And everyone jumped to right away to do this. So I really appreciate all of the support from you guys and John for hosting us here at Electronic Arts tonight. That's how the evening's going to work. I'm going to talk to them about all kinds of things, not just, of course, what's happening with their companies, but also, you know, to a great extent, much of our success, all four of us believe, we can really, really point to UC Berkeley and our experience at Cal. And so we'll talk about that. And we know that a lot of you who might not be Cal graduates hire Cal graduates. So we want to give you sort of the nudge, because that's what we do. But then we're going to open it up to questions. So we want you to be thinking about what you'd like to ask people up on this stage. And don't be shy. You can really ask anything, including, you know, Paul Otellini and the aviator glasses. What was that about? I mean, so be thinking about that, and we'll be opening to questions, and there will be microphones walking around. But gentlemen, you know, I've been here for the past couple of days interviewing all of you as I have in the past. And I guess I just want to start with the business, John, and beginning first with you, because a year ago, we were talking about how tough the economy was. I mean, how meaningfully have things changed, if at all?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say, honestly, that the economy feels a whole lot better in some broad, generic way. What I'm seeing is when we make a product that really nails a marketplace, where its performance is exemplary, where the experience delights the consumer, there's literally no limit. So what I'm seeing more than I've ever seen before is growth for a very choosy consumer. When the consumer finds what they want, you can sell as much as you can make. And frankly, anything else doesn't work at all.
Paul, you, as we mentioned in the opening clip, have come off, what, I think your third quarter of record earnings. Mm-hmm. Is that growth being driven here in the U.S. or is it elsewhere? And should we worry about what's happening here in the U.S. or do you feel that you see it coming back?
It's a bit of both. 75% of our revenues are not in the U.S. So we are, in many ways, a proxy for the global economy. Last year, if I go back to the early part of the problem last year in the financial crisis, China lifted our company and our sales through the first half of 2009. In the second half of 2009, the U.S. consumer and the Western European consumer lifted it. And then this year, the enterprise market has returned. So in many ways, we see the fact that we have a global footprint in many, many markets being able to give us consistent growth through this 8-quarter period of turbulence. And like John, I think we're a little bit, you're not immune to the global economy, but at the end of the day, computers are tools of productivity. Why do you buy a computer? It makes you more productive or have more fun or better communication. So it's become much more indispensable to people's lives. If it breaks, you don't wait till the end of the recession to replace it. So we're doing pretty well, principally driven by new product cycles and by emerging markets.
John Batter, you know, it's not cheap to go to a movie anymore. but your movies are getting more, I guess, detailed and complicated. Do you find that people are rushing to the movie theaters, or do they really want amazing, amazing opportunity? They wait to hear what reviews are. Are people really cautious with their money these days?
Well, I think like John and like Paul, we're really not feeling the effects of a global economic rebound. We feel like we are sort of where we were last year. Generally, and consumers are going to the theater, but the theater is increasingly bifurcated. It's sort of the acceleration of a 10-year trend. I think.
Only a Cal grad would use the word bifurcated, just so you know.
Thank you, Liz. Top movies continue to perform extraordinarily well and better, and that's about all that performs. And so we're doing very well at the box office. We do that also as consumers are switching down from maybe trips to staying closer to home and going to the theater. On the flip side, our home entertainment business, our DVD business, is off a little bit as consumers continue to switch out of DVDs and switch into rentals and other less expensive substitutes.
Yeah, see, each of these gentlemen, deals with a fast evolving market. And John, one of them is that a lot of people are going to direct online casual gaming versus software-based gaming. I mean, how quickly, how facile and malleable does a company like Electronic Arts have to be as you watch people just change their tastes almost immediately? And their behavior immediately.
This has actually been a real exciting story for us. So as recently as 5 years ago, we had 95% of our business being a shrink-wrap disc sold at retail. So what you would find at a Best Buy or a GameStop. Today, we've got approximately $750, $800 million of our business in digital, growing well north of 30%. And so that's a big business growing fast. What's fascinating about it is, let's go back to that 5 years ago when 5% of our business was digital and the rest was in a packaged goods shrink wrap. There was probably about 250 million people in the world that in one way, shape, or form were involved in gaming. So the vast majority of people, and I'm sure everyone in the audience, you knew a gamer, but you weren't one yourself. And 250 million is a very small percentage of the global population. We estimate today that, driven by sort of smartphones, iPads and the equivalent, Android, pick the system, all the stuff that Paul makes to drive it, there's well north of 1 billion consumers involved in gaming. In 5 years, 250 million has become north of 1 billion. And we think we serve as a company more consumers every year now than the entire industry did 5 years ago. So it's exploding. And the challenge for companies like Electronic Arts, or companies that may have made their way in a prior generation of technology, is making sure you don't get lapped or left behind. We feel like we've successfully made the transition. But if you think about ABC, CBS, and NBC with cable, where do they end up? You're not working for a broadcast operator today. When you think about the music labels, Universal, EMI, et cetera, and how much money Apple extracts from the music environment versus, say, the traditional label, we think we've made that transition, but thanks to Cal, thanks to Silicon Valley. But seriously, the transition's been a challenging one. That's one we think we've navigated well.
For those of you who don't know, one of the original Silicon Valley companies was Intel. Before that, Fairchild Semiconductor, and a lot of the founders of that went on to start Intel. And Paul, Intel's whole thing has always been smaller chips each year and more on them and growing. But looking at how your industry changes, how do you keep up? And it hasn't just been putting Intel chips inside computers. You've really broadened that because of the need out there. And if you're looking for new profits, that's where you go.
Yeah, on both sides. I think that on one side, in order to make things smaller, cheaper, faster, it's harder. The technology is no longer predictable. Keeping Moore's Law alive, inventing that next generation.
Wait, explain to people what Moore's Law is.
Moore's Law is a theory that, actually it's an observation that Gordon Moore had 40 some odd years ago, that the number of transistors you can put on a chip cost effectively would double every 18 to 24 months. And so that is a surrogate for capability, or for compute capability. And that's been alive for four decades. But it's getting very expensive. A new factory, the ones we announced today, are north of $4 billion each. The technology to run in that factory is $1 billion a generation. The products that you want to design on it are several $1 billion each for each product cycle. And you have to do this year after year after year after year. And so I see the industry changing very dramatically in the next 5 years. I remember Gordon Moore in 1983 or 4 said, there'll be a shakeout in the semiconductor industry when fabs hit $1 billion. He was wrong, but he was right.
Fabs are the plants.
Fabs is a manufacturing plant. He was at $4 to $5 billion, or maybe $6. You're seeing it because there are just very few companies that can afford it. That'll change the nature of the business, to change the nature of competition. It'll, on the other hand, deliver devices that we've never even dreamt of before. We can bring massive amounts of computing to things that you put in your pocket, or things that you put in your car, or things that you put in your refrigerator. We can enable the smart grid in a cost-effective fashion. We can deliver proactive healthcare cheaper than any other way on earth by applying IT skills to it. So I think on one hand it's a problem. On the other hand, it is the greatest opportunity we've ever seen.
Where did Gordon Moore go to school?
He went to Berkeley.
Do I have to prompt these people or what?
As did Andy Grove.
As did Andy Grove. John, I spent a day in December a year ago at DreamWorks Animation, and we were interviewing Jeffrey Katzenberg and all of the animators. That's where I met John, and all of the producers of these amazing movies, from Shrek to Kung Fu Panda. And you told me that you were able to speed up the process of making an animated film, which up until then, I believe, before they brought Intel in, took what, 3 years or something like that?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And then Intel came into the picture. Talk about the strategic partnership that helped you guys speed that process up.
Sure. So in 2008, we formed a partnership with Intel to bring the sort of the best of Intel's engineering capabilities together with the best of our engineering capabilities. And keep in mind, making one of these animated movies or cartoons actually takes 5 years and about $130 million and about 50 million render hours to process. So a lot of high technology. And we create and use our own tools. And we saw an opportunity to take advantage of Intel's next generation of chips by bringing together our two engineering organizations. And by doing that, we literally take something that's an iteration cycle of, a day. So an artist works on something for a day, and they kind of have a general sense of what it looks like, and then they hit a button, and they go home, and they come in the next day, and they see the fruits of their labor. And they're good at it. They've been doing it for a long time, so they get about 80% accurate. But then they do that again and again and again. So about a week later, they kind of get it right. Well, now they're going to see it in real time. So what you see, what you get in real time. So the iteration cycles are really extreme and very important to us, and will literally change the way in which we make our movies.
Paul, I don't know, how did you figure out that you guys could help DreamWorks?
Well, it's a problem we've solved before in high-performance computing. We've done this in...
Oh, so easy.
No, we've done this with the banks who need, to really optimize their algorithms. We need it for scientific things, for some of the national defense stuff. So we've learned how to optimize code for an environment. And DreamWorks gave us access to the source code, but they did more than that. I want to tell an anecdote off of John's story, which was when we first engaged, Jeffrey Katzenberg gave me a tour down there and showed me all the cool things they were doing, and then said, I need you to liberate my artists. These guys are spending 24 hours so they see their creation. If you can liberate, if they can see what they're doing in real time, we can have better movies. And one of the great examples of that is the shift to 3D. Mm-hmm. Making a 3D movie takes twice as much computational capability as a 2D movie because you have two separate streams. So at the same time, they cut the production time by more than half. We doubled the capability by adding 3D. And it was a wonderful computer science problem that is now having applications in other areas.
John, talking about gaming and the effort it goes in, I think people understand how hard it is to put this stuff together. So I find this really fascinating. But, if you walk around Electronic Arts, there are a lot of futons because people sleep here. Talk about the challenges of putting together games as 3D becomes more important. And of course, Microsoft has come out with Kinect. Sony PlayStation 3, we just showed it yesterday on Fox Business, has come out with the Move system, which captures every single move that you make. So when you smack somebody, it really can make you feel like you're part of this game.
So let me level set.
Really
let me level set one thing for you. So all of you probably use a computer, and you might use a word processing program. You might use a spreadsheet. You might be searching the internet. And if you were to light up one part of your computer, you can actually see how much of your CPU you're using. And by and large, I'd guess, unless some of you are completely off the charts, unless you're gaming, you're rarely using much of that CPU. You're not really pushing it very hard.
We don't like to talk about that, John.
We like to think of it as a game on every CPU.
Okay.
So, and what games do is when you're looking at something moving in real time, the kind of thing John Batter was talking about a minute ago, you can be rendering a football bouncing on wet turf being kicked by an athlete. That's 60 times a second being redrawn. It's being lit from a whole lot of different directions. And there can be tens of thousands of pixels that are being represented there. So the calculations beyond that are staggering. And the math is, as you might imagine, if you want to go back to your college physics class and try to imagine rendering a football bouncing on wet turf in real time, not an easy thing to do. Paul's chips allow that to be possible. And you start with something that's that complicated and that interesting. Why the folks sleep here? It's very hard to do. And we used to have one window onto the world. The window was basically a powerful PC or a powerful game console. And today, we have multiple windows onto the world. These windows can be the cell phone in your pocket, powerful PC in your pocket. It can be controlled by the human body with Kinect, which is the new system from Microsoft. It can be controlled by Move, a new motion-based system for input that was created by Sony or the Nintendo Wii. And what used to be a really hard problem, but you always started with the same idea, was a keyboard or a controller, and it was going to be shown on one screen. Now there's a staggering number of input devices and a staggering number of screens, little ones, big ones, giant ones. I play games here, by the way, and they're really cool. And so all sorts of output devices. And we do 3D sound and 3D games. And so, frankly, what's happened is we've gone from being an industry that's interesting for a small number of people, if you will, a big niche, to being a mass market, because it's precisely enabling all these devices, all these processors, and all these screens that has invited another billion people into our marketplace and caused us to buy one heck of a lot more futons than we've ever had. Because it doesn't get simpler. And I'm thinking of inviting Paul in to see if he can have the amount of time and double the processing sometime soon.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the things that I've learned by being in Silicon Valley is that I don't know, back when Lehman Brothers was imploding, being in New York, everyone on the street, down to the taxi driver, do you hear about Lehman Brothers? It was crazy. And everyone gets so focused on the Federal Reserve in New York and what's happening with Treasury. And I come out here and I talk to venture capitalists and I talk to these guys and they're like, Ben Bernanke, who? We don't care. We're trying to fill a need that people don't even know they have at the moment. So, Paul, one of the things that I've noticed lately, and to me this is something always emerges every year in Silicon Valley, and one of the things that just stuns me today, and it involves gaming, is that there are these companies that have convinced people to pay money for virtual goods that will never exist. That to me is the true genius. Anybody who runs a company that can convince you to buy a magic potion that's on the screen that will never be in your hands, forget it. But when people come to you, and these companies such as a Zynga or an Outspark, and they say, help us make this happen, do your engineers just come up with the idea? What is the process when you're brought an idea that you've never thought of before?
Well, those ideas would come to our venture capital group.
Which is among the biggest, by the way, on the planet.
Largest
Intel's venture capital firm.
Corporate venture capital operation in the world. So they'd come in and they typically would ask for help. They tried to sell their idea. I can remember making a visit to Second Life when they first started. And I went through that same learning process of you really want to have people pay you real money to buy virtual stuff. And the guy said, yeah. And I, well, okay, fine. And they bought a heck of a lot of servers. They went through a similar process where we sent in the software team to do optimization. And I think we might have taken a piece of them as part of the venture group, but I can't remember. So that would be the typical thing. We'd go in and try to help a company that was going to use our stuff. We wouldn't second guess or judge their business plan.
But Second Life, for example, that was so hot, and then that's sort of dimmed a little bit, and then here come the other ones. I mean, this, John, is such a mercurial and fickle industry. How do you keep up with it?
Well, I think both of us in the entertainment side of the equation, we live the world. And so, I mean, Pogo is the largest seller of gems in the world, except they're just pixels on the screen.
God.
And they're diamonds and rubies, and we love the fact that people buy them from us. And that's a great thing. And for the people that own them, for what it's worth, they think they're real, and that's good enough for me. But I would make this point, though, that we've got 6,000 people in developmental electronic arts. The vast majority of them live and breathe inside the audience of people that they're serving. They play the products, they look at everything else that's in the industry. I play the products, I look at everything that's in the industry. So it's a fickle audience, and in a lot of businesses I've worked in the past, I made soap once in my life. I wasn't a big consumer at the time, it was just out of cow, wasn't really necessary. But when you're making entertainment, it really helps to be part of the target audience that you're pushing something towards. And frankly, some of the folks we've got are just brilliant at it.
John?
Listen, it's got the virtual items have value to the people who are buying them.
Okay, and by the way, I interviewed somebody today. She runs this company, Outspark, and she told me that she had one of the people who was playing it spend $35,000. And they looked at this. They called the bank to make sure that this person had the money because they were a little worried. But she said it was completely of their own volition. Putting aside the fact that that's insane.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I actually think some of it's generational, frankly, because we are moving in that direction. We're moving there with our content, by the way. Our content, our music content is now predominantly digitally delivered. Our movie content will be digitally delivered. It will live in a cloud. I presume our game content will largely be digitally delivered. So the idea of physical goods equal value, I think, is an idea that is going to go away. The idea that digital goods, including gems in Pogo, have value, and they have value to people, I think is reasonable and will become more real and more part of the culture over the next 5 or 10 years for certain.
Okay, I like the real thing. I don't know about you, but that's just amazing to me to wrap my mind around that. John, you just referenced, I think you just said that in your early days you sold soap. I want to talk about what you guys all did just after you graduated Cal and your trajectory, your move to the position that you got to now.
So if you're starting with me on this end of the table, I would actually go back to crediting Cal for a second. So I got to Cal not knowing, frankly, at all what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something ambitious, but it was not better defined than that. And I met a lot of really smart people. I studied at ECS. I learned, programming, learned Pascal, which is a predecessor language of C++, which helps me think about how we do what we do here. But I ended up in the business school, and I ended up taking a job, selling laundry detergent additives for Clorox. And great business experience right out of school. But the foundation at Cal was truly spectacular. And, guys from my neighborhood, and I didn't grow up, trudging through 12 miles of snow to get to school, but nobody in my neighborhood had the opportunities that I got to see at Cal. It made a staggering difference in my life.
Paul?
A similar experience. I mean, I went to graduate school, not an undergraduate school at Cal, and I had to decide whether I wanted to be a lawyer or a businessman. And I worked for a law firm in San Francisco for 4 months to make some money to go to grad school. And after 30 days, it was pretty clear I wanted to be a businessman. And although I've kept a lot of lawyers busy and made them rich in the last years. But it was the Cal experience was I think fundamental to getting me the ability to apply for a job at Intel. I went to Intel right from the business school, and be successful there. I think more so than any other part of my education. And it was because in those days the business school did not really use case studies. It was coming out of the Chicago methodology, and it was very quantitative. And I had an economics degree undergraduate, and so this appealed to me. The whole context of learning how to solve problems through data is what I've been doing for the last 35 years at Intel. So it gave me the grounding, the skill sets, the capability to really look at things in an analytical way, and to some extent, live with a lot of engineers day on day. And I would not have been either gotten the job or been successful without that background.
John, your experience at Cal, did you know what you were going to be, and do you credit what you learned at Cal and the way you were taught to learn with the success that you enjoy today?
Sure. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was a history major. So yeah. And that gave me a broad-based liberal arts background. So I think, taught me how to write reasonably well, how to think analytically, how to communicate, and also got out of Cal, I think, as you and I have joked, with the certain knowledge that if I could actually make it through Cal and graduate, I could do just about anything as an undergrad there. And so I ended up at one of the early computer companies, microcomputer companies, Kpro Corporation. And some people in the audience may remember them. They've been out of business for probably almost 20 years now. But I was fortunate enough to join there at the beginning of that company's life cycle and kind of ride that all the way up through a great IPO, and then sort of unfortunately down the other side of the life cycle. And in about 3.5 or 4 years, I started there in sales, incidentally, and figured out there must be a better way to run a railroad. So went back to business school and sort of furthered my education that way.
Do you guys think that Cal is doing the right job today when you look at the graduates who come to apply for jobs here at your companies?
So I would say for us, the answer is yes and no. Yes, in terms of the people who we see. I think we see our business is the fusion of engineering and art, just as I know John's is largely. And so, we look at a lot of Cal engineering grads, and we find highly competent, really skilled grads that are, frankly, I think more well-rounded than most we see and fit very nicely into our culture. So that's the yes. The no is we just don't see enough of them. We want to see more of them. So that's.
So I'm going to weave in a slightly political message into this one, which is, but the first thought is among the executive team, there's more grads of Cal than any university, any other university. So we think that's a good thing. And we too do very well both with business graduates and engineering graduates, and many of them have had great careers, and we feel good about, probably better about Cal than all but maybe a couple universities in the world. So that's the positive. I think the larger issue that we're facing right now is the economics of our business, mean that while we're hiring more overseas, whether it's Canada, Eastern Europe, India, China, Romania. And that's a consequence of, part of it policy, part of it economics, but it's real. And when I opened up with your first question, was saying we haven't really seen a rebound. I think I, like a lot of folks, maybe not Paul, who just announced 8,000 new jobs today, but that's more unusual than we would like it to be today. And so my bigger challenge, at least when I think about what's sort of good for us as a country, is it's harder to place them here for all the reasons I mentioned, and I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole, but it's tougher than it ought to be.
How frustrating is that, Paul? I mean, I know, today Paul Otellini and Intel announced that they were going to spend billions of dollars here in the U.S., Oregon and Arizona specifically, but that type of announcement is more few and far between here in the States than it is overseas. What should we be doing in this country to make it a more friendly and more fertile atmosphere to hire people. I mean, that's the whole issue. We still have outrageous unemployment, and I think that 10% number, or under 10%, is not really reflective of the true number, which if you talk about the underemployed, meaning people who may have jobs but not what they used to pay, is much higher, 12, 13, 14%.
Well, I want to compliment you, Liz, first of all, for only taking 30 minutes to get me to a question where I can really get in trouble.
By the way, that camera is, we're going to hold the tape. It's not going anywhere.
I'll answer your question, but let me segue back to Cal for a second. For us, it's a win-win deal. Engineers and MBAs, very practical, very highly skilled, very work-oriented kids, and I wish we could hire more of them. I wanted to talk a little bit about that initiative we announced last February, which was Invest in America. And Intel and a bunch of the Bay Area companies and a bunch of the national companies committed publicly that we will double the number of college hires in 2010 versus 2009. That was an increment of 10, 12,000 kids. And that, I think, helped make sure there was hiring happening at a time when no one wanted to hire on campus. And so part of this is it's very, very tough to get jobs. I think 25% of the kids got jobs this year, job offers this year. So it's important that big companies that have the wherewithal to do it make that commitment, because if you don't keep that pipeline going, we all die. As to the competitive question, it's kind of where do I start? My biggest concern right now is the uncertainty that is still in the economy and in business people's minds. The economy is likely to have low to slow growth the next couple of years. People will make investment decisions if we take away the amount of variables. So as long as people don't know what the tax rates are going to be, capital gains rates, R&D tax credits, energy costs, healthcare costs, et cetera, you add complexity to an already difficult decision of do I invest now or not. Companies like Intel can afford this and will make those investments because it's the lifeblood of the company. But a lot of companies that don't have a global market, particularly U.S. companies right now, are facing very, very tough times. And I don't think, as a result, until the government makes policies that settle things down, you're going to have confidence return and have that money that's on the balance sheets come off and be investments.
What country is doing it right? I mean, John, I know that you just opened, was it just open a plant in France? I'm thinking France, of all places, is a better country. I mean,
We told me they were in Ireland, but it's close.
okay.
You were liberal arts, though, so it's what? A couple thousand miles apart, but
That's right.
it's not that big a
I
difference.
mean, which country offers the best incentives and the most comfortable atmosphere?
So I would echo Paul's point about uncertainty here and expense here makes it harder to hire. You know, EA was the very bottom of the Fortune 500, which means 99% of American companies are smaller than we are, and 1% are larger. And so we're at that cutting point where most employment takes place. And the uncertainty for a company of our scale is a very big deal. And we see, uncertainty around every issue Paul mentioned. But mostly it's a series of policy choices that leave us uncertain about how confident we can be, hiring in the United States, and add cost to hiring and employing in the United States relative to other countries. And it used to be a joke. I remember you mentioned, France. I used to work in France, and nearly 20 years ago. And at the time, the relative circumstance was staggeringly different. Employing in the United States was such a better idea than anywhere in Europe. Frankly, almost anywhere in the world, the combination of education, infrastructure, lack of regulation, and the rest that goes along with sort of a good business environment. And at best, it's a level playing field, but I think it's tilted away. And I find that frustrating. And I'm a Cal grad, but I'm a U.S. citizen, and I'd like to see sort of a better environment, and we're all working towards that. But places where it gets to be, very easy to hire in my world, right across the border in Canada. And they have better incentive systems to employ people in my world than they do here. So those things are hard and they are frustrating.
John Batter, what do you think?
We're sort of in a slightly different boat. We've similar. We've expanded our footprint. We have a studio down in Glendale. We have a studio up here in Redwood City. We've opened up a studio in the last couple of years in Bangalore. But for us, it's really about where the talent is, and and the talent takes years and years for us to train. So it may be that we're just stuck with higher costs for longer, but we are, continuing. We've actually doubled the size of our enterprise in the last 4 years here in California. So between Glendale and Redwood City, we've added about 1,000 new jobs as we've increased our output. We'd be open to looking at other locations. It's just the amount of kind of proprietary skill and knowledge that goes into kind of crafting what we do. We feel like we need to stay in our two locations, our 3 locations now.
Can I build on this for a second, though, just to touch?
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, to build a game, and by the way, John used to work with Electronic Arts, so he knows our business as well as I do. So, but 10 years ago, to build a game, realistically, you had to have one team on one floor making the game because the communication infrastructure was such that if they weren't in one spot, you really couldn't do it. And typically, for a high-scale game, you might end up with 150 people or more working for a couple of years to build the product. Right here in the building we're in, more often than not, we have the brain trust of designers here in the building, but a lot of the labor, art, low-level engineering, low-level programming in Eastern Europe and other parts of the world, and the value add that's coming from lower-cost locations where the economics are better and the certainty and regulatory environment are better, they're rising up the value chain. And we're at a point where this is a big deal if you're thinking about employment. So we still are where the talent is, but it's now not the entire team. It's increasingly a shrunken head with a larger body as someplace else.
Paul, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to actually amplify the point that John made, which was that in our business, there's sort of broadly 2 kinds of jobs. One set of jobs are R&D, and they parallel the experiences of these 2 guys very much. You go where the talent is, and to some extent, the cost is almost irrelevant, because good talent, when you can find it on an R&D project, can really give you the high return. And I've also, I've been in business a little bit longer than these guys. I can remember a time when we went to Israel for 35 years ago, because it was 10 cents on the dollar to operate there for engineering. Today, Israel is $1.10 on the dollar. Yet it's our most productive site in terms of R&D.
Why is that?
Just because of the energy level, the team, the integration, those kinds of things. So for R&D, labor costs, while they're important, are not, in my mind, the critical dimension. It's the quality of the workforce and the availability of talent. Where the US has fallen off the curve is in manufacturing, actually building stuff. And that is a different set of environment. It's cost-driven. You have to have a competitive cost structure to sell against global competitors. No matter how good your R&D is, you can leverage some of that, but it really has to be a competitive nature. And that's where I think the best-known methods in the world, you ask where it's good to operate, are those countries that find a way to offer incentives for companies, American or otherwise, to build factories. When was the last time you thought about a foreign company building a big factory in the United States? Besides someone who had to because they were building automobiles that you can't ship.
That's it, the
right?
autos.
And beyond that, you don't see it. And you don't see it because it just costs too much here. Yet it's a great workforce. It's a great market. It's highly secure. So why wouldn't you do it? It's because it's just more expensive. And it's not labor cost. It's infrastructure. It's tax credits. The highest corporate tax, second highest corporate tax rate in the world is right here. Second highest capital gains tax in the world is right here. So until you make those competitive, the world's capital is not going to invest here. Forget asking US companies to open their balance sheets. It's everybody else's companies that we want to attract as well.
I'm officially depressed. Well, because I truly believe, my father was the son of Russian immigrants, and he was raised in Canada, but he said, Liz, I wanted to come to America, California specifically, because I felt like I could do so much better. And if it's any place that is making it brutally difficult to do business, it's the state of California, John. Yet people still flock to Silicon Valley as this place where they want to create something. Why do you think that is? And do we risk losing it?
Well, of course we risk losing it, but I think it's what's been referred to as the beehive effect. The infrastructure is here, the people are here, the schools are here, the R&D talent that Paul was just talking about, John was talking about, is here. So all the entrepreneurial spirit is here. So all the elements in the stew for kind of the creation of the next kind of big thing, I think are here. Certainly, if we're not careful, we can lose them. We can lose our, our edge in university. We can lose our edge in capital and financing. Many other ways to lose it. So I think it's, this is a great place to be, and we're thrilled.
And by the way, John has given us a treat. He's brought something that nobody else has seen yet, and I want you to talk about your next big project.
Sure. We have a movie releasing on November 5th called Megamind, and it stars kind of the voice talents of Will Ferrell and Tina Fey. It's a slightly different movie for us, but it's a lot of fun. Do you want me to roll it?
Yeah.
So this is
The whole movie?
No, I don't.
No. So,
Settle down, it's not an hour and a half.
yeah, what I'm gonna roll is kind of a fun 60-second commercial that has not been in rotation much, so many of you probably haven't seen it. A few of you may have, but it's a lot of fun and give you some of the sense of the movie. So why don't we go ahead and roll that?
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to meet the baddest hero the world has ever seen? Megamind! Hit it! Straight out of Metro City. He used to be a villain, just chilling and thrilling. Now he's like a cure, so just call him penicillin. His friend is a space fish, talks like this. Who are you? Megamind. Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, and Brad Pitt, baby.
That's right.
I make this look so good. From DreamWorks, baby.
You're kidding, right?
DreamWorks
Megamind.
in 3D.
Rated PG in Real D and IMAX 3D.
Wow.
So, thanks, Liz. So, last thing to say on that movie was made about 5 miles south of here in Redwood City. 100% of it was made there. So, there's a couple guys in the audience here that were involved in it.
John, what's the next big thing for Electronic Arts? By the way, great audio system here.
Yeah.
You should sit in the front row and well, one of the things that we're sort of excited about, we just released a game about a week ago, Medal of Honor. It's likely to outpace any movie box office this month. It did well north of $100 million its first week. We feel good about that. I'd say the game I'm personally most excited about is a comeback of one of our great franchises. It's coming out on November 16th, Need for Speed. Many of you probably heard of it. This is the closest thing between a spectacular racing experience and a social network wedged into one product I've ever seen before. I think it's going to change the nature of video gaming. You literally will be playing the game, and coming across your transom will be challenges. John Batter will be challenging me, I hope, in a couple weeks' time. Literally as I'm playing, coming in and saying, I can beat that time. It's as if you're in a living room with all of your best friends. And it's a level of technology integration that no game's ever seen before. We're introducing it November 16th. We're pretty happy about it.
That's great.
And if you'd have warned me, I'd have put a demo up there.
Yeah. Paul, what about you? What's huge for Intel coming
Well, I'd
up?
like to show you a picture of our next chip.
I know, poor Paul. It's like,
It doesn't
ooh,
do
look at
much.
this transistor.
The biggest thing we have is a new chip we'll introduce in January that is, I believe, I've actually met a guy in the reception earlier that worked at Intel on the Pentium. And I told him this chip is the most radical, important chip we've done since the Pentium. It's that good. It's revolutionary. And we'll launch that in January.
What's it called?
Well, the code name is Sandy Bridge.
Okay.
I can't
How
tell
do
you
you
the real
pick
name.
code
yet.
names? I'm always interested in that.
I have no, the teams name them. But the most important, most interesting thing we're doing is, I think between now and a year from now, TV will change more than it has changed in the last 50 years. So many companies are working on integrating in a very seamless fashion the internet into the TV, to video, live video content. And it's not like surfing the web on your couch anymore. This is really well-done integration that'll just makes you the programmer, brings information to you in a seamless fashion, lets you see old episodes of things and so forth. Google's doing it. A number of the other companies I know here are doing it. They're not announced yet. And I think that if you look 12 months from now, you'll see 50, 100 million TVs and households have been transformed for the first time since they turned from black and white to color.
I want to open up this discussion to audience questions. So I know we have some microphones walking around, and as we do that, I know we also have some Cal students and some non-Cal people who might be considering switching their profession, who knows, but talk about the issue of persistence on the way up, because I think that there's a generation issue here where people think it just happens. I mean, it took people, wow, you're on billboards in New York or whatever, you're on national television. It took 20 years for me to do that, but Cal taught me just to start at the bottom and be persistent and just hang in there. And you know what? You may not be the best at what you're doing. Hopefully we are. But it really is those who hang on the longest, isn't it, John?
Yeah. I don't really know. Paul may have better perspective on that than I do. So.
Gosh, I'd hate to think that your success is because you hang on the longest.
You didn't give up.
I think persistence is a better word, or focus. Everyone finds their own level in their own career, and I think that there comes a time when everybody has to make a trade-off between personal life, ambition, desire for money, desire for recognition, whatever, and what you can do and what you can't do. And to some extent, I think Cal helps that because it gives you the great grounding that John talked about earlier in terms of really seeing the world and the context. But boy, there comes a time in your life that I suspect all three of us share, which is, do you really want to go for the brass ring? Life at the top is interesting, it's rewarding, but it's hard. You make a lot of personal trade-offs to do these jobs, particularly in the modern post-Sarbanes-Oxley world. And
No kidding with that.
And I think the kids coming up today have to make those decisions. What I've seen, the biggest difference that I've seen in the kids that we hire the last 5 years versus prior generations is the amount of concern they have to give back to the community. It is up factor 5 or 6 versus what I saw 25 years ago. And that's great. But that trade-off says they don't have quite as much time on their job. And so they're making decisions based upon that.
John, you talk to a lot of high school students and a lot of young kids. Oh, I want to be in this business.
Well, there is no question that the idea of making a video game lights up young people today. I would echo what Paul said about the energy that it takes to get in persistence. The one thing I would roll out, and I spend a lot of time talking to kids, teenagers and college kids, is that as much as it takes that extra effort to climb your way up or make a difference in a business environment, it's also unbelievably rewarding in what it gives back to you and the opportunity it gives you, and frankly, the control it gives you over your agenda. There's just something a lot more satisfying about being able to be part of a team pointing in the direction than simply being towed along by someone else's vision. And I do think one of the grounding points in Cal is, look, Cal is easy for no one. If it's easy for you, maybe you're more special than I was, but Cal's easy for no one. And learning that it's going to be hard there is a great preparation. I really do think it makes a difference. But a quick story about one of our competitor schools that's down the valley, turn left.
Never heard of
red. One of the founders, actually, of one of the largest VCs in the valley, called me up about a decade ago and said, hey, we hired this kid to be CEO of a music startup. She's 22, and she's got the world, but the startup isn't going to make it, and I want to help her get her next job. Came to interview, and I said, well, what would you like? I agreed. He's a friend of mine. I'll talk to his candidate. What do you want to do? Well, I'd like to be an executive vice president. I said, well, how did you get to that? Well, I was CEO, and I figured you're only president. I wasn't CEO back then, so I've got to be one notch down. And I thought, that could happen at Stanford, but it couldn't happen at Cal. And by the way, she, after turning us down, to be an assistant producer, ultimately took a job as an assistant producer after being unemployed for a year and a half and having to make the rent. But the point that I'm trying to make is Cal is a grounding, and I think helps a lot. One of the reasons we all give back to Cal is we see it as a lever up for so many people. Most of us, weren't born silver spoon style, and it sort of gives us well, you were. Yeah. But other than Liz, the rest of us weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth.
I'm appreciative, though. All right, let's open it to questions. I know we have some in
Liz,
the audience.
Can I just add one thing
Yes.
to that, which is, one of the things that I think we try to tell kids in high school, going into college, and that we're seeing more of is follow your passion.
Yeah.
There's not just two paths, business or law anymore. It is, but I mean, really, listen, that was for me also. That was the sort of expectation. And now there is, if you are an artist and you enjoy art, you can actually have a very successful career as a commercial artist at a place like Electronic Arts or a place like DreamWorks. So there are and there's many other places. So, depending on what your passion is, follow that passion, and, there should, and if you work hard, there will be rewards.
That's the best advice. I agree. Okay, here's a microphone. So just raise your hand and try and get the attention of people with the microphone.
Yeah, hi. Keon Sanjay. Hi, John, and hi, John. I'm...
And Paul.
Yeah, I know both Johns from prior to this. But undergrad, 1992, Berkeley Columbia Executive Program, class of 2011. And I have a question that should... and I used to work at EA. I'm married to a DreamWorks employee, and I have Intel chips all over my house. So.
We need more of him.
So my question should actually run the gamut of all three of you. You could argue that Moore's Law has democratized the process of content creation with GarageBand and video editing tools and that kind of thing. You can also argue that the internet has democratized the process of content distribution, a la YouTube and other user-generated content. And I just wonder how all three of you view those demands or options for our attention as challenges and opportunities for your three companies.
Sure. Certainly the sort of audience fragmentation and people have a lot more time or a lot more things to do with their time is a challenge. User-generated content is interesting, but it's different than professionally generated content. We had the Blair Witch Project that was non-professionally generated, did great. But if it was that easy, I think we'd see more of those. And we only saw one of those. I'd love to see more of them, but we've only actually seen one so far. Maybe we will see more. So I think it really, and I guess I attribute that to the availability of tools. And by the way, film cameras have been, motion cameras, film cameras have been around for years. So it's really the talent that's behind the camera. It's talent that takes these pieces and puts them together. So I guess I would say that there's a democratization of tools, but not a democratization of talent. And so in the end, it comes down to the talent.
That's a great point.
We don't care. On the site. It's all going to run on a server that we build, or
it's all good for you.
So, but I wanted to make a different point that you may have omitted, which is that I think the biggest democratization it's given us is the democratization of democracy. You look at this election cycle, you look at what happened in Iran, you look at what's happening in China. This technology is liberating people faster than it's liberating business models. And it's giving everyone a voice in all of these contests worldwide. And I think we've just begun to see the beginnings of what that impact is going to be as it goes global, as we go from 1 billion people on the internet to 6 billion people on the internet.
I'm not going to follow that with a comment on video games. So why don't we go on to the next question.
Hi. Recently, we start to see a lot of the largest Silicon Valley companies this year changing and basically expanding into new areas of businesses, like HP, Oracle, Cisco, going into different areas. What are your plans for your companies?
Paul?
Are you trying to sell us a company? Or? Well, I won't comment on those. I can tell you what we're doing. With the acquisition, the most recent acquisition that we're in the process of making, which is McAfee, Intel is now the 5th largest software company in the world in terms of heads. Now, who would have thought that? We're a chip company. But increasingly, our chips need millions of lines of code to ship with not just drivers, but middleware, operating systems, user interfaces, everything else to liberate them in these devices. So I think what you're seeing is various aspects of that as companies try to have a whole solution that goes to market, means that you're no longer a PC company or a chip company or a software company. You're trying to deliver the entire stack for your product to your customers, like the way we solve John's problem. And that, to me, is the mega trend that's going to happen. You'll optimize on your core competencies, but you have to have these other skill sets.
I would echo the same thing with a completely different answer relative to the tactics. So for us, this democratization of basically chips everywhere, from the refrigerator to the dashboard, has, as I mentioned earlier, brought us an audience of 1 billion potential consumers versus a couple 100 million. We used to make just shrink-wrap discs for consoles like the PlayStation or a PC. We're now the leading purveyor of content for mobile phones. We're the #1 provider of all content for the iPad and the iPhone. We're a big content provider on Facebook. We're the #1 provider of content that is played on smartphones in every Eastern European country. So what's happening is a lot of these devices are creating opportunities frankly, for people as they move up in the economic status to be entertained more often. They like that stuff and they do it. The other factor for us is our games used to be solo experiences. Now virtually every one of our products is a social network unto itself. People like to play with their friends and they like to communicate simultaneously. So we're learning a lot of new skills as we start to build products for these new markets.
Next question.
Is this on? Sorry. I'm actually a current doctoral student at Cal, and I'm also a classroom teacher. And my question is in the realm of education. One of the things that we know is that your companies, as well as many, are cultivating digital natives, we call them. And with that, one of the things that we really see, though, is an extreme between the analog world that they live in a classroom and the digital world that they live in outside of a classroom. So my question to you is, what do your companies or you as an individual really envision for the future of K-12 education? And how do you see your companies really participating in that real global conversation around it in a real tangible way?
Who wants to take that?
Yeah,
this is a challenge.
I'll give you one specific answer to your question that we're doing, which is we started a program called Intel Teach 12, 14 years ago in the United States. And the goal at the time was to teach teachers how to use computers because their kids knew how to use computers, and people were starting to bring PCs into schools and labs and stuff. 12 years later, we've trained 8 million teachers around the world, and we've morphed from how to use a computer to how to use technology to improve the learning process. These are curriculum development tools, in some cases, parental control tools for the teacher to be able to modulate what the kids can see on their machines and so forth. And we've trained, for example, 25% of all the teachers in China. And it is
Could you train the ones here, please?
I was going to get to that. It's a wonderful program. We started here. We've trained 250,000 teachers in the United States because there's been so much pushback on this. So what we see is aggressive integration of this technology, a desire to bring it into the classroom from the tops down at the Minister of Education level in many countries, and a pushback in the United States through the diffused nature of our school districts and to some extent the issues around the union that preclude these kinds of technologies. Until that gets solved, I don't think you can solve the problem you talked about.
So EA actually, cross-cuts this in a very different way than a much larger company like Intel. One of the programs that we've done, many, many times now is exposing kids, middle school, high school, college, to what it takes to create the kind of stuff that John Batter put up on the screen a few minutes ago. It takes an enormous number of skills, and we've gone to the trouble of putting programs together where we connect those skills back to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade curriculum. So they know what they need to learn now, if say they're a middle school class visiting or a high school class visiting, versus what they can ultimately do with it. We try to answer the question that so many kids, why do I have to learn this? Because for the most part, doing the math homework or doing the science homework seems to most kids in a fast food world where they can be instantly gratified in so many ways, like hard work and not worth the effort. And so, in a way, I think, companies like Intel can maybe provide the muscle. We kind of provide the sugar. Show them why they want to do it. And I actually think there's a role for that, and we think it's something we'd like to continue to push.
So I guess we've taken a slightly different tack. About 6 years ago, we noticed that we were hiring a lot of students directly out of college, out of the university, and they were sort of ill-prepared. They had lots of enthusiasm, lots of great ideas, but ill-prepared to do the work that we needed them to do. Now, the good news was at the time they weren't afraid of computers, weren't afraid of computer programs, learning new programs, kind of a sea change from sort of the prior generation, but still didn't have the right skills we needed. So we built some significant curricula inside of DreamWorks for those artists, and spent several years kind of refining those. And now we've been driving those down into the schools that we recruit most effectively from. And there's about half dozen of those schools across the country. And then we continue, and then the plan is, we started with seniors, and we're driving deeper into those organizations, kind of at the freshman level, and then deeper into their feeder schools. So that's the path we're on.
Next question.
Hi there. My name's Remy. I'm a student at Cal, and I teach a class on the interpretation of video games as an artistic medium.
Now that's a class.
Wow.
I like that.
It's good. I had a question about EA's stance on innovation. It seems as though a lot of the larger gaming companies, Activision, Ubisoft, Zynga, they're sort of against innovation within their games, perhaps because of sort of the market sort of mentality of having to have a product that you can show is going to make money. Zynga's sort of motto for the developers is that they're not there to innovate gaming, they're to do what works. However, it seems as though the larger companies who've sort of expanded the market with social gaming, mobile gaming, the sort of core gaming audience has sort of moved away, and I've seen a lot of like new gamers also move away for the independent scene, which is having a lot of innovation due to new technology being so easy for developers to sort of amateurly make their own sort of creations. I was wondering whether or not EA was sort of taking steps into sort of like spearheading innovation within gaming.
So I think it is fair to say that there are a couple of schools of thought among game companies. Some of the companies you've mentioned are very famous for their steadfast stance against innovation. And frankly, it almost takes my breath away to imagine that they can run their businesses that way. I think it's a very cynical view. And I think it's likely to be short-lived, and I think it's going to result in less stellar results over time. One of the things that has always worked in gaming, and frankly in many R&D-driven businesses, is to have a really good idea and exploit it and stop investing in tomorrow's ideas. At least in the present, you can make more money. I'm absolutely certain that's a bankrupt concept. I came at this as a consumer-oriented executive. I want to delight my customer for tomorrow. We invest an awful lot in innovation. As we've been trying, we went through a tough period a few years ago, and as we've been investing to get out of it, as opposed to simply cutting to get out of it, building new intellectual properties, new experiences, like Need for Speed that I mentioned a moment ago, and you should try if you haven't seen it.
Okay.
I'm incredibly proud of being part of the innovation camp in the game business, and I think that will ultimately prevail. Frankly, with a market recession that sort of hit us all in sort of this 2008 timeframe, the best strategy for optimizing income in 08, 09, and 10 was probably slashing the heck out of your R&D and sort of monetizing your existing products. I do think that as we look at 11, 12, and 13, those that did that are going to be in deep trouble.
Next question.
So actually, can I
ahead.
just build on that? So I just want to say that, I think it was mentioned I was at EA for a number of years. And I had a great opportunity here when I had worked in the traditional shrink wrap business for a number of years here, and then had this idea, kind of crazy idea that mobile games would be an interesting thing to do, and might be something I got personally excited about, something that I could see becoming more pervasive. And I pitched it inside the company. And pitching it was, we talked about it over lunch, and they said, okay, we trust you, go do that. And I went off and got the support to form a team and to build the core of a new business, to bring games to a new medium and do it at a different quality level than had been done before. And I think that is innovation, and that is a company taking a risk. And so I had that opportunity here. So I guess I haven't been here for a few years, but I don't think that much has changed. That I think this is a company of innovation that I have to say was always my experience here, and I was a beneficiary of it.
Go, John Batter.
Good story.
Thank you.
Another question.
Good evening. My name is Nick Briones, class of 1965. A great class. Anybody else from 65? There we go. I have a 14-year-old daughter. She just started high school. And she's starting to think about, well, Dad, what college do I go to? I know you went to Cal, and I think I really want to go to Cal, but there's also a Red School down the road, and they're supposed to be pretty good. And she's just starting to ask questions about, what do I major in, and what's really good, and nobody has a job, and will I get a job? And had I really understood the things that you were going to share and what tonight was really about, I would have invited her to come. So my question to you is, and I think this would be invaluable to many teenagers, not only my daughter, how would it be possible to share tonight's evening through a video with her and other teenagers or whoever would want to hear it?
Are we recording this? I thought we were. I think that all of us are up here tonight because we really wanted to impart the fact that this experience of Cal has been very instrumental in how we all reached either the very top or almost the very top of our industries. There's a lot more to do, and all of us always look up above, and we don't see the ceiling. Our head isn't hitting it up against. I would tell your daughter that I'm a Stanford reject. I applied to Stanford, and I didn't get in. And I remember looking at their journalism department and memorizing the faces, and to this day, I don't see any of them on the network news. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I feel like I went to the right place. And the experience that I learned, I guess I'll never know, but the experience that I had at the journalism department at Berkeley was one that I would say for any student, no matter what your field, if Cal teaches it, 21 Nobel Prizes have come out of UC Berkeley. It's just incredible to me. The sort of richness of the education, no matter what field you're in. But Paul, what would you say to a 14-year-old kid?
Math and science. Assuming you've got a predilection in that area, the jobs that are going to be available for your daughter in 12 years, 10 years, are going to be the ones that are service-oriented or science-oriented. And if she has the skill set, and one of the problems we have is that most girls get turned off to math and science in the 4th grade. So if she's made it through that valley and she's still interested, boy, we'll give her a job, sight unseen, unless she goes to Stanford.
Well, would it be possible to get a recording of tonight's presentation?
I don't know.
I don't know. That's It's going to be on Cal's YouTube site.
Fantastic.
That is awesome. That's Cal for you.
Do we get royalties?
Thank you.
Next question. Okay. And this is the last question, by the way.
Well, thanks for letting me finish off.
Okay. By the way, this is Gary Kay, class of?
Public Policy, School of class of 74.
And he is my esteemed producer from Fox Business.
Paul, I want to ask you a little bit about manufacturing. Intel has succeeded because it does what it does better than any other company on the planet. A couple of years ago, we thought that the promise of Silicon Valley was going to extend to the silicon that goes into photovoltaic cells. And Liz and I covered that extensively when we were out here 3 years ago for the first time. Now, folks are going, you know what? All of that manufacturing has gone to China in a flash in less than 3 years, and it's not coming back to the US. What is it going to take for us to get manufacturing right? Because unless we make things, and you pointed this out before, we're not going to succeed as an economy.
Well, you need something that's defensible. And I don't mean tariff or trade kind of defensible. I mean intellectual property or trade secret defensible. The reason that all the PV cells are now in China is that it's relatively low-tech manufacturing. So if someone comes up with a state-of-the-art change to that, to make highly flexible, for example, panels, that could be done, and it could be protected. That could be done here because it'll be a knowledge-based process. There are a couple of very interesting companies that are being funded here in the Valley who have, I think, the possibility to invent the first truly cost-effective yellow light LED light bulbs, much better than this curly Q fluorescent things, right? And they'll last forever and they'll be really cheap. There's no reason that factory can't be in the United States because it'll be protected and it's going to be knowledge-based, not so much labor-based. So I think if we're going to do manufacturing and we're going to have that kind of asset base as a country, we need people to make the investments in the right technologies to do it. We've been successful because no one else knows how to do what we do. And we just stay ahead of the race 2 or 3 years, and that gives us the breathing room. If something is static, it's very difficult to compete on anything but labor cost over time.
John Batter, can we bring it back to the United States?
I think some yes, I think some no. I think some of the jobs that are gone that, as Paul just pointed out, are labor-based, are probably not coming back to the U.S. The knowledge-based jobs, I think, stay. We hope stay here, and I think, likely do stay here.
So give us some hope at the end.
I'm actually not going to give you hope. I'm going to give you an action. So a comment I was making a few minutes ago was about sort of teams here of, say, 20 controlling execution of 150 or 200 outside the United States. And it used to be that those sort of outsourced jobs were low-level art. We would give them a key cell of this and this, and they draw the pictures in between. And no programming, certainly no design. And there's sort of a hierarchy of skill sets, and they start very rudimentary, and they move up a value chain to the point where they're doing fundamental design. And in our industry, we have yet to successfully to put fundamental design outside Western markets, and in many cases not outside the US. And the question a few minutes ago mentioned Ubisoft. It's quite funny when they build a game in China, and you see that they say they've designed it in China, and it's always Jean-Francois Louis. And you think like, all right, so I know how they did that. It's still, it's in our province because he's probably not educated in China. These markets are rising up in their place of value add, or their ability to value add higher and higher in the hierarchy, and they do threaten American jobs. So the action I encourage, anybody that's pro-education, anybody that's building infrastructure that supports American R&D or supports American manufacturing, get behind them, because it's slipping away. It doesn't have to. If we had 25 universities like Cal spewing out engineers, we could use 25 more. And that will make all the difference in the world. And when the chancellor's got to deal with some kind of the budget cuts he's had to wrestle with this last year, that's really hard. And so I'd encourage you to support the university. It makes a difference. It's our #1 competitive advantage.
I will end by saying this, that 3 years ago, I came here for Fox Business because Gary Kay came up with the idea to do what was called 3 Days in the Valley. And as I was looking at all of the people whom I was interviewing and their bios, I noticed that so many of them at the end said, he or she is a graduate of UC Berkeley. And I stand here tonight and I use these 3 gentlemen as an example that Berkeley has for far too long ceded the valley to other universities. And I ask you tonight, does Harvard have a lock on Silicon Valley? I would say no. Does MIT have a lock on Silicon Valley? No. Does Stanford have a lock on Silicon Valley? Absolutely not. Thank you very much. This is bear territory. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
What's that?
Oh,
No.
All right.
Oh!
Thank you so much. Please support us. Go Cal.
I don't remember the words.
I know.
Thought they'll kill somebody with those instruments.
All right.
Thank you for supporting Cal. Drive safely. Good night.